Hello and welcome to the second in the series from the UCAN Youth Support Worker Apprenticeship Scheme. Today's podcast, we're going to be looking at the Theory of Youth Work module. During today's episode, we'll have a professional discussion with all the assessors on the qualification, myself, Della and Alex. We'll also talk to two really inspirational apprentices that are actually going through their endpoint assessment at the moment. Devon and Sue. We're going to get kind of their perspective on some of the Theory of Youth Work module. We'll look at principles, the challenges within their community. Just to let you know before the episode, the discussion with the two apprentices was really inspirational. I'm sure you'll learn a lot from them and kind of use it with your own work during the Theory of Youth Work module. But yeah, enjoy. Hopefully you'll get a lot out of the episode and it'll make you think about your practice a little bit more. But yeah, enjoy the episode. In this first section, it's going to be a professional discussion between myself, Alex, and Della, all the assessors on the qualification. We're going to be looking at outcome 1.1, which is describe the key purpose of youth work. We'll also be looking at outcome 1.2, identify current national and local policies and guidance that informs your youth work. Myself and Alex will also look into a little bit in anti-discriminatory practice during this section. So we'll cover outcome 1, outcome 2, and a little bit of outcome 5. The remaining outcomes will be discussed in detail with the other apprentices just after we've covered these three outcomes in a little bit of detail. Right. Well, firstly, you're going to cover 1.1 in the Theory of Youth Work, which is describe the key purpose of youth work. So, what are some of the key principles within youth work?
I think for me, one of the biggest principles of youth work is about empowerment. I think empowerment can really cover a lot of the work that we do. And it's kind of like, for me, like an umbrella for like a lot of our interactions with young people. So for me, empowerment is about helping young people to take control of where they're at in their lives and to give them the skills to kind of like engage with wherever they are, whatever context they find themselves, and kind of empower them to take steps to learn new things, grow, develop their ideas, to explore, and really like feel comfortable to be able to get a sense of who they are during that time of adolescence. So for me, like one of the key principles of youth work is that empowerment and creating that space where we are making young people feel like they can ask questions, they can make mistakes, they can feel like they're unsure, but we're alongside with them and empowering them to kind of explore all of that.
Yeah, I think like building on that as well. It's about them kind of having a voice and having a say of exactly what they do and what they learn when they're in like a youth work setting, because they probably won't have that in any other part of their life. Within school, they won't really have a voice. They won't be listened to maybe as well as they would be within a youth work setting. So it's about them understanding they have got influence on things. They have got a voice. We will listen and we'll kind of plan sessions or workshops or activities on what they want to do, because how much of a good skill is that whilst you're growing up, knowing that someone listens, knowing that someone cares and actually takes your voice and your influence seriously. Because I don't think any other setting with working with young people, they wouldn't get that on a day-to-day basis. So it's important for them to know that they've got that voice, that we listen, and we want to sort of them to guide us what they want to do on a day-to-day basis.
And I think that leads into participation, which is another key principle in youth work. And what we look at is voluntary participation, that in all other environments, what you were just touching on, Dave, most young people have to attend. They have to attend schools. They have to attend, meetings with other professionals. But with youth work, we want them to voluntarily be involved. We don't want to bribe or manipulate them to be part of our services. we want them to come because they actually want to do what we're offering. And I think for us that can be really rewarding when we look around and any young people that we're involved with or we're providing a program or session, to know that they're there because they actually want to be there. They want to learn this, or they want to upskill themselves, or they feel safe. To me, that's what I find rewarding with youth work. So I think voluntary participation is a key principle, and understanding what we actually mean by that.
Yeah, with that as well, voluntary participation, it might not always be something that they want to do, but it's an important life lesson to actually do things sometimes that you don't want to do and push yourself out of that comfort zone, because that builds that resilience. It builds maybe skills they haven't got already. So yeah, that's a massive one about voluntary participation. As I say, obviously it is activities that they want to do, but also kind of pushing themselves out of the comfort zone they wouldn't usually do, and build new skills and competencies and things like that.
Yeah. And I guess that's where challenge comes in as well. Alongside it is being able to feel comfortable to challenge them through the relationships that you have with young people, and challenge yourself as well. I think it's a two-way. I think for me, a principle is about that equality of, I'm not over the young person, I'm walking with the young people, and it's not what necessarily, although I might have a way of seeing the world, and that it's about that interplay between their experiences, my experiences, and how we kind of share that together, and ask questions of each other.
Yeah, it's kind of for us as well, is learning about their lives, because we're maybe a bit older than them, not relevant, not actually understanding what's going on in their lives. And if we understand a little bit more what happens on their day to day and what happens within their lives, we can take that into our rest of our youth work practice with other young people as well. So it's about listening to them and what their concerns are, what their worries are, what's going well in their lives, and kind of putting that into our day to day practice as well. Perfect. Right, we will move on to 1.2. So 1.2 is identify current national and local policies and guidance that informs youth work. So in terms of national policies, which ones can we kind of think about when we're thinking about youth work practice?
I think there's the National Occupational Standards for Youth Work, which is which kind of like sets out like a broad picture of some of the behaviours and the ways that we should kind of do youth work. And I think it's a really good one to kind of look at, because it's quite extensive for it, and it kind of shows you, even in different kind of contexts, what kind of policy and how we should kind of act as the youth workers, and what guidance and how we're kind of engaging in like informal education, but also when we're thinking about training and qualifications for ourselves. So it does have, it also outlines, if a training organisation was training youth work, what are the skills, the knowledges, the behaviours, and the kind of things that we want to kind of see in youth work. So it's a really good kind of like policy document to kind of have a look through.
Yeah, definitely. It's a good thing as well for you to kind of research these policies and kind of maybe how they inform your practice, but also how they kind of inform your local policies as well. So obviously with this one itself, it says national policies, so research them, but also have a look at local policies that are kind of guided towards your community and your locality, because they might be different within different organisations or different counties or parts of the UK, depending on what need there is within your local authority. So yeah, it's really important for that one to have a look at what the local policies are and how they guide not only your organisation, but kind of your authorities or the organisations within your authority and why they are put in place. Perfect. Anything else you want to add to that one? No, I think it's about you kind of as a learner having a look at both national and local policies and think about your youth work practice and how these kind of guide those youth work practices.
Yeah, and it changes as well. So what was relevant a couple of years ago, it's always the kind of changing thing. Even with the national occupational standards, that will get updated and changed. I think you should really engage with the NYA, National Youth Associate Agency, because that has a lot of, they're always updating their policies and they liaise well with the government as well. So they will have like a really clear picture of some of the relevant and kind of like current policies and guidance.
I was you just touched on what I was going to go with the MYA, and I was going to say most local authorities will have some kind of policy relating to youth work in that community, because they're all maybe focusing on different issues within whatever's going on within that community, you know, antisocial behaviour, knife crime, you know, upgrading local parks, whatever it is. So when apprentices are looking at this, when we're looking at local policies, I would suggest going onto the local government's website. For instance, mine is Greenwich. So I'd go on to Greenwich, I'll type in youth work policies or young people's policies, and that should bring up what's ever happening within that community or that borough.
Perfect. Right. 1.3, outline current legislation that informs youth work. Firstly, I think it's quite an important question to kind of know what the difference is between a legislation and a policy. So what is a legislation?
Wow.
Sorry, I'm putting you in a spot there, aren't I?
You did. You did. And I'm hoping us qualified youth workers can answer this. So I know what it is, Alex, but go on.
I don't know. That's weird there. Legislation is more like a legal abiding. It's gone through government. There's policy, there's paper on it. You can go on gov.uk and you'll be able to kind of outline and summarize it. Whereas policies are less, they're not necessarily legally binding, and the policies might be the thing that the policies might be informed by the legislation. So you might have an overarching legislation, and the policies will kind of break it down on how your organisation will kind of do whatever the legislation is saying.
And just how you can easily identify legislation is it will have ACT at the end of it, ACT. If it's got ACT at the end of it, it means that isn't a legislation, because some apprentices don't even recognise what is legislation.
Yeah, as well, they are obviously constantly updated as well. Kind of what we covered in last criteria, they're updated due to maybe case studies that have maybe gone wrong within other youth work practices or things like that. So so have a look at the most updated version as well, maybe have a look at why that legislation has been updated. Possibly that could be an interesting thing for you to have a look at. In terms of key youth work legislations, I don't think we should name any. I think it's kind of down to you to have a look at which ones are the key youth work legislations at the moment. What do they cover? Which policies do they guide? So why were they updated? Maybe, like I said earlier.
And they would have, sorry, Dad, they would have covered some of these in safeguarding already. They would have looked at legislation. So yeah, I agree with you. You know, we shouldn't come with what they, you know, any more legislations, because they should have already been touching on some of this.
Yeah, well, I would say also look broadly as well, because there's some things that are directly like youth work or young people involved, but there's other legislations, and I won't name them again. It's for you to kind of look about, but there's other legislations that are not necessarily directly youth work, but still nonetheless informs your youth work practice.
Depending on the environment in which you work. So an example being, if you work with care leavers, there will be one particular piece of legislation or an act that is kind of the umbrella for the work that you do with the care leavers. I don't want to name it because, again, we would like apprentices to do some research. Yeah,
definitely. That's good. This one's kind of down to you to have a look at which, as Alex just said, and that Della just touched on, which ones are relevant within your organisation. So, for example, like Della just said, if you are working with young people who have left care, so which ones are appropriate and how does it inform your youth work within your practice and your organisation? Perfect. Right, so we'll move on to 1.4. So describe your own organisation's purpose and policies. So again, with this one, we're not going to kind of tell you exactly what your organisation's purpose and policies are, because I'll be honest, we don't know. So this is kind of down to you to have a look at what your organisation's policies are. It could be safeguarding policy, wellbeing policy, whichever one. Just it's up to you to kind of have a look at exactly what they are and what those purposes, what the purpose is, and how it informs your day-to-day practice and the youth work sessions within your organisation.
Most smaller youth work organisations would have some sort of mission statement or ethos, and it would be good for apprentices to kind of look at that, because they could use that, because that mission statement is usually the purpose of the work that the youth workers will be doing. So I encourage that, but not every organisation will have that.
Yeah, and sometimes your work might even be in conflict with what the initial policies and purposes are. So that's also a really good reflection. And I think I always say as well to think about your own personal purposes for youth work, because you might not be in your role forever, but what is the type of youth work would you like? What kind of purpose would you like to do in terms of youth work? You know, what would be your own ethos or own kind of thing as well to kind of think about. So yeah, it's really good to have a look and think widely as well.
Yeah. Right, perfect. Just to finish on outcome 1. So we're thinking of a quite creative way for you to present this outcome would be either a poster or a brochure. So Della touched on what we kind of expect to have in this poster or brochure. She talked about the mission statement, so that could be included. What else do we kind of expect if they are going to produce a poster or brochure outlining kind of the purposes and the policies within their organisation?
What is it they actually do? Is it all centre-based youth work? Do they do detached and outreach? Do they work with families? I always say when they look at creating this flyer / poster, look at it like you're advertising your organisation and the work that you do. What would you want to be telling young people? How are you going to encourage them, you know, to attend? If you were informing parents of what's going on in that provision, include all of that. It doesn't necessarily have to be one page, it could be a few pages, and treat it like, you're promoting or informing people, young people, families, carers in your community of what you offer.
Perfect. I'll stop the record. Right, we'll move on to outcome 2. So outcome 2.1 is describe the following principles for youth work. So you'll have these listed. So what we're going to do, we're going to give a couple of examples and exactly what we want from you from this criteria. So I'll start with active participation and empowerment of young people. So for this one, we want an example from your own practice. So how do you empower the young people within your organisation? How does that guide your kind of activities? How does it guide a project you might run? What is the impact on the young people within your organisation? So have a think about that as well. So Alex, you're going to cover voluntary engagement by young people.
Yeah, with voluntary engagement, similarly, we're looking for how do you make sure that young people are coming to your space on their own accord, that they're engaging, not because they're being coerced, and give examples. I think you've touched on participation and you've looked at like Hart's ladder of participation as well. And that's all part of that participation and voluntary engagement bit. But yeah, think about why youth work is different as compared to school, social work, all these other places where the engagement may not necessarily be voluntary. So then think about where your work is voluntary. And maybe even if you can't see it in your own work, think about ways that you could, improve it. How can you make it that young people are coming of their own accord and not because they're being coerced?
Yeah, I think I'm not going to cover the rest of the 3, but just to touch on them a little bit, especially the equality, diversity, inclusion. Just think about what we discussed in outcome 1. Think about the policies within your organisation, some of the procedures and how they kind of make sure that all young people are equal within your space and everyone's included. Same with code of conduct. Within your policy, just have a look, research what the code of conduct is within your organisation. It will be within one of your policies. So I think with this one, researching with those 2, especially D&E, equality and code of conduct, researching the policies within your organisation, that's the most important thing. And then giving an example how you use them within your day-to-day practice.
Yeah. And I think you'll find, depending on your context as well, there may be some tensions with it that you might not feel that you're actually doing some of these core principles of youth work. And, you know, these principles are not just like random. They've come over years of like youth work happening and people thinking about, well, what are the key things? And I think, especially when it comes to active participation, voluntary engagement, and informal learning, like those things are, for me, like what really defines youth work. And I know youth work is changing in the sector, so a lot of people are doing a lot more one-on-one work and more targeted work, which is almost like social work light. They're doing a lot of kind of things that social work do. So, you know, those are some of the tensions, those are some of the conversations that you might be having. So yeah, really engage with it. Think about your own work, think about your practice. Are you doing these things? If not, could you be doing your things? Or where do you feel some of the tensions are or some of the problems are in the work that you're doing? So make it really personal to you.
Yeah, I agree with that, especially the volunteer engagement and active participation is the key principles of youth work. And the impact of young people is massive because they wouldn't really have that in any other space within their lives. Within school, they wouldn't have it. So a youth work setting is where they kind of can explore some of these things and feel empowered and feel listened to. So just say how important that is within youth work as a whole, but also within your practice and your organisation. Right, now we'll look at learning outcome 5. So we're going to look at anti-discriminatory practice. So what is anti-discriminatory practice and what do we need to work within?
Yeah, like I think you would have touched on this looking at some of the legislation and some of other parts of this this assignment. But yeah, anti-discriminatory practice is so important as a youth worker. When we, you know, we like to use words like we create safe spaces. We like to say, you know, everyone is equal opportunities, but like, what do we really mean by it? What are the things that inform that work? So you've got certain acts. Again, I'm not going to tell you those acts. Those are stuff that you should be researching, but there are protective characteristics around people, and we need to think about how our work is challenging some of that discrimination. And it could be really simple. It could be our spaces. You know, are we making our spaces physically welcoming for all types of young people? You know, what our programming, it covers all parts of our work as youth worker. And I think youth workers, and it's becoming so much more a thing, especially as, you know, a lot of these things are up for contention in kind of like the political sphere. We really need to start thinking about our own work and how we want to be anti-discriminatory, but also what's already in place. So yeah, there are some core principles that you need to look at. You know, the national standard is there. There's you know, there's a few other organizational policies that are out there and around, but really think about your own work. Like, what are you particularly doing to challenge discrimination in your practice? How are your programming things to challenge? What are your sessions like? What are your resources like? You know, what is your team like? You know what I mean? There's a lot. It covers so much of it. So yeah, there is an act. Please go have a look for it, and it will lay out all the people, you know, all the characteristics that we're kind of looking for, and then just really think about how that impacts your own personal work.
In this next part, we're going to talk to the current apprentices who are going through their endpoint assessment, Devon and Sue. We're going to cover all the other outcomes in more of an informal conversation type method, rather than kind of going through what we expect from you, as we discussed, myself, Della and Alex. So yeah, we're going to look at communities, we're going to look at the principles of youth work, we're going to look at professional boundaries, we're going to look at code of conduct, look at values and prejudice. So yeah, hope you enjoy. This conversation flowed really well, and we've got some really, really good information from both Sue and Devon. Both have different perspectives, but yeah, I'm sure you'll find all this information invaluable when you're completing your Theory of Youth Work section.
Youth Work podcast. So we've got two of the apprentices who are actually going through their endpoint assessment at the moment, who are going to discuss some of the theory of youth work outcomes. So today we're going to look at things like the communities that they work in, the principles of youth work, and also models of youth work. So just to begin with, so you get a kind of idea of who they are and who they work for and what kind of young people they work with, we're going to do some introductions. So firstly, Devon, would you like to sort of introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name's Devon. I am currently an apprentice youth support worker, and I'm working for Rotherham Metropolitan Council. Now in that we're sort of early help as well, so there's a little bit of a crossover. And I work in the Youth Justice Service and a little bit in the evidence-based hub as well. So sort of delivering outcome 22s, out of court disposals, a lot of voice and influence work, but I'm sure we're going to get into that. So yeah, my job role is basically to work with young people who are on the cuff or sort of entrenched in CCE, really, child criminal exploitation, and to kind of reduce reoffending where possible.
Perfect. Thanks, Devon. Over to you, Sue.
Hi everyone, hope you're all right. My name's Sue and I work for Sefton Council, which is just on the outskirts of Liverpool. I'm a youth worker and I'm also doing the youth support work apprenticeship. What is my role? On paper it's a youth worker, but I do lots of other things. I lead on our LGBT youth group and also do some lead work for the council. I'm currently the D&V manager, so I look after D&V for our schools that are under our licence, as well as some of our youth organisations. And we work alongside 13 other youth organisations which we commission to deliver youth work across Sefton. Also try my best to do participation and also gather youth voice, because I think it's dead important.
Perfect. Thank you. Right, we're going to go on to kind of the main part of the discussion now. We're going to discuss a few of the outcomes. So the first ones we're going to look at is the principles of youth work. So if we think of principles of youth work, what do these principles mean to you in your day-to-day practice? So maybe Devon, you can pick one of those principles of youth work, and what does it mean to you? How do you implement it in your day-to-day work, and what impact does it have on the young people within your provision?
Brilliant. Yeah, so if it's all right, can I kind of do a little bit of a crossover between the first two? So active participation and empowerment of young people and voluntary engagement, because that kind of ticks off perfectly. So in the Youth Justice Service in Rotherham, so what I've done is I've created this sort of group forum where we take, where we've got young people who are on statutory orders who can attend this group, so we can kind of, first of all, capture the voice, but not only that, but really empower them. So for example, what we've done is we've kind of got this group together where we've given them the opportunity to stand up on the stage in front of some very, very high directors and senior leaders and help them to sort of articulate their presentations. And that could have been through sort of PowerPoint, stand-up presentation. We had one young man do a song, which then got forwarded on to Tom Zanetti. So what it means for me is, personally, I think participation and empowerment is the heart of youth work. I think personally that without inviting the youth into this service, we'll never move forward. I find it quite hard to believe that the people who decide what effective practice is a lot of the time very, very far away from frontline youth work. So for me personally, I believe that the voice of these young people is probably the most important thing of our role, really, because they're going to tell us how to adapt our practice to move with the times. So for me, it's about getting them into these groups, giving them a voice, supporting them through that sort of adolescent journey and development. But not only that, but showing them and being a role model to them and saying, actually, I was in your position once. I've seen a lot of things. I've been in a lot of places, and we've shared a lot of the same experiences. But you can see that I'm in this position now. Unfortunately, it's not as common. But that being said, through this group, we get these young people who start on statutory orders, finish their order with the Youth Justice Service, who then volunteer to attend this group, who now sort of champion that group, and they've took that journey as their own really now. So they can see this chance group going really, really far, training professionals in and around Rotherham and using their experiences to make a difference. That's what them two principles mean for me. Every day I'm at work, I'm always trying to find out what young people are saying, what young people are feeling, because I'm aware that the older I get, the further away from the streets I'm going. So I need to keep that connection really. So yeah, I kind of see myself as a bit of a sort of community connector, and I sort of bridge that gap between deprived and marginalised young people and these sort of statutory, quite formal corporate services really.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Like with, I think that one for me as well, as obviously not youth worker anymore, as an assessor is the most important one, voluntary engagement, because nowhere else in their lives those young people have kind of a voice to say what they're worried about, what they're thinking about, what they want to kind of learn from a youth worker. So that's brilliant. Sue, in terms of principles of youth work, can you maybe pick one or two of the main principles, and which ones are important to you, which ones do you apply within your day-to-day practice?
Yeah, so I think Devon covers a lot of good stuff there, which I feel quite empowered to as well, and something that I try and bring into my practice. But I think really there's not one particular one that I think is more important than the other. Like, so when I started this apprenticeship, I wasn't aware that there was like principles of youth work. So this has been a real eye opener for me, which has been amazing. And this stuff I was already sort of doing in my practice anyway. But I think for me, equality and diversity inclusion is a massive one, obviously, and lived experience. So when I was in school, like I was under Margaret Thatcher's reign, so Section 28 was in place, and schools couldn't talk about being gay and stuff like that. So as a young person who didn't have them role models out there, who didn't know what they were, who they were, I really struggled. So something that I do try and do now is include everyone, make sure everybody is included. Doesn't matter where you're from, what your background is, what your sexuality is, what your gender is, if if you've got an additional need or anything like that. I think everybody should be included. And for young people today, we are seeing a bit of a shift. Young people tend to be more inclusive, more diverse, which is nice to see, but we still need to educate them with that, so that now falls into the informal learning and education. I think that's key as well. Something that I find quite frustrating now is even like 20-25 years plus since I've left school, sexual health education in school still really poor. I've had numerous amounts of young people, predominantly LGBT young people, who come to me and go, when we have sex ed in school, it doesn't include me. I don't feel visible. I don't feel valid. So, not just that perspective, but I think we have a better relationship with young people than teachers tend to do. So we can do more of them life skills with them. We can something I found that works really well in my practice is I can say how it is. Don't I try not to pussyfoot round. If I've got to be hard with them, I'll be hard with them, but I'll be hard with them in a gentle way, so they don't feel frightened, I suppose, more than anything. So we have tough conversations around, gun gang and knife stuff. Devon probably more of an expert than I am at that sort of thing. Whereas schools have more of that, we have to be straight down the line and we have to do it this way, whereas we can be more open. We can work with partners if we need to and bring them in as well. Code of conduct as well, like it's there to protect not just the young people, but to protect us as staff as well. So that really did open my eyes. Safeguarding is also everybody's responsibility, but sometimes I found that because youth support work can be an extra job for some people, they're not really maybe as strong as they should be with certain things. When it comes to safeguarding, it's like it's a difficult one, really. So something I'm trying to do now is instill it more now. Like, this is what we should be doing. This is how, you know, youth work should work when we're out and about. We've, you know, COVID killed us off as a team. We don't have youth centres here in Sefton that belong to us, so we have to do a lot of outreach, a lot of detached work where some of our workers had never done that before. So it was like, right, print off the detached code of practice, detached work code of practice, print off the code of conduct, give it to them, and, you know, this is a new way of working. We've got to do it. You know, our young people need us during COVID. So yeah, so I think it's all dead important, and I think with fresh eyes for me within our service, because a lot of our workers have been here for 20 plus years. I'm trying to, like, put it back out there, if that makes sense. I'm probably not coming across really well here, but I'm trying to get them reinvigorated in youth work.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Sorry, Dav, I've just interrupted you. It's
No.
interesting that you say that, Sue. Would you say that you've kind of come into this service and you can see that there's a culture, and what you're trying to do is sort of single-handedly shift that culture? But I feel that being lived experience of the justice system, I'm feeling that when I was in school, I felt like there was this academic mold and I never fit it. And that's why I didn't get on with school. But now I'm feeling the same thing now I'm in the service, because I'm like, I'm really underrepresented, and like I'm looking at like service managing roles and director roles, and I'm like, I don't fit that mold. But as I've researched into that, I get it, and I don't think it's a personal problem between anybody in the service or anything like that. It's just a perspective. We have different perspectives, and some directors will have a perspective where, you know, this is where the parameters and the structures of this service are. And I feel like sometimes when I ask certain questions that are outside of them parameters, it kind of knocks people back a little bit. And that's why I've got to be careful, because I don't want to kind of step on anybody's toes and almost say, yo, you need to listen to me. That's what I was kind of getting from what you're saying. That's all I was like. It's interesting because I'm seeing sort of a culture that I want to kind of adapt as well, but it's about how do we go about doing that. It's interesting.
Yeah, 100%. So it is. It's trying to change a culture that's set over that period of time. And like, I felt before I did this apprenticeship, I was probably falling into that a little bit. Like, not being aware of, say, like, principles of youth work, for instance, like not being aware of that. And I don't think it's anyone's fault. I just think they've always done what they've always done, so they're just always going to do what they're always going to do. Do you know what I mean? So this has really opened my eyes, so much so that I've actually sat with our head of service and we're coming up with a new strategy for the youth team. So we've moved from early help services now, and we're now in communities. So our team name now is Community Safety and Engagement. So he's like, he's never done youth work. He's oblivious to it, really. And I've spent afternoons with him talking about what we do, what could we be doing better, like what can we do in the future as a service. Like, we've got no money, everyone's struggling for money. We've got no staff. All our staff work after 5 o'clock. So how can I, in the day, and we've luckily just got another worker who does 24 hours, who's doing some daytime stuff. How can we in the day deliver more stuff? How can we be more diverse? In the holidays, how can we get out there and be doing more stuff? So we've got this youth bus, which when I say that, they go, oh, it's just a minibus. It's not. It's a single-decker bus kitted out for young people. Now, I can't drive it yet, but the plan is I'm going to drive it so that in the summer, in the holidays, we're going to try and get it out more and reach more young people. Them young people that aren't in early help services, them young people, like you said, Dev, are on the cusp of falling into, criminal activity, exploitation, that sort of stuff. I want to give what I never got, what I didn't know was around when I was a kid. And I think that's where my passion comes from. Like, I just want young people to feel valued. And I think sometimes I sit here and I look at the people making these decisions, predominantly male, predominantly middle-aged, middle class. Now, I'm not calling anybody out, but they're so far removed from young people that they don't know what young people want or need. They're just looking at the budgets, they're just looking at the strategies, they're looking what the plan is overall. So I'm a bit like you, Dev. I want to change the culture. I want to change our team's culture, because I'm sick of always doing what we've always done, and we need to change it. but single-handedly, it's not easy. I'm not gonna lie, but
it's hard. It is hard. 100%. But I feel your frustrations. You're not on your own there. You're not on your own. And it's probably worth noting at this point that this is the perfect time to come into youth work, in my opinion, because the way that services have worked for such a long time, it suddenly changed. We want to be restorative, we want to be trauma informed. Now what we've got is we've got a massive workforce of people who have been programmed to work a certain way. And overnight we're asking them to change. That's hard. That is hard. How do you ask a full workforce of people to do that overnight?
yeah, it is. I don't know how you do it.
And that's probably one of the challenges that we're up against. You know, we're young, we're fresh, and we haven't had all them years of being, you know, risk-based. And I think it's interesting. And like I said, it's definitely worth noting that for the people who are watching this now, this is the perfect time to come into youth work, because you can help us change this culture and this shift.
Yeah. Definitely. I think what Sue, really interesting what Sue was saying, that you try and put these things in place before we have to put interventions in place, before we have to put strategies in place, before we have to, like, cutting things at source rather than getting the service, where we have to put interventions in place. But it sounds like the service in the past was just putting things in place after something's happened. It's good that it sounds like you're doing things now to kind of, in your local area, because there's a need to cut things out at source a little bit and put that support in place where they wouldn't have that in the past. And then, as Devon was saying, they get involved in things they maybe shouldn't be getting involved in. But it sounds like you're really, really making a difference because there's that need in your local area. So really, really, really amazing to hear kind of the passion that you've got for making a difference within your community. And it's good to kind of see that there's people like you within the profession that's trying to kind of change the profession step by step. And we have more people like you. That's how youth work will become what we want it to become. That's where youth work will envisage all these principles. And it's good that you're teaching other youth workers about these principles, other services about these principles, because at the end of the day, people like you, and hopefully people like me and Della that are kind of delivering the qualification, that's how we're going to make youth work more professional. And these principles envisaged,
Yeah, I think as well, it's youth work's always seen as, well, not always seen, but by other professionals, it's seen as it's not really needed. Oh yeah, you just have a game of pool with young people, or you just play table tennis with young people. You're just chilling with them. You're not really doing anything. I'm really frustrated with social workers not taking into account young people's voices. So I'll give you an example. Being LGBT and being an out LGBT person in my role, which was a hard decision to make, and I'd done it. It took me a long time to do that and feel comfortable with it. But I wanted to be someone that young people could relate to. Oh, look, that person is LGBT. Oh, I can relate to them. They've got lived experience and stuff like that. But I am literally fed up to the back teeth of social workers, early help workers. They get someone who's LGBT, and what they will do is they'll pick the phone up, or I'll get an email going, I've got a young person who's LGBT. What can you do? Okay, well, what do you mean, what can I do? Have they asked for any support for being LGBT, or is it just because they feel like they needed to tell you that, just so you know? Well, I don't know, I've not spoken to them, but they need to come to your youth group. But do they? Have you asked them? Well, no, but I just want them to come to your youth group. Well, I feel like you need to ask them that, because we're a voluntary engagement service. We're not a tick box exercise for your plans. And I've really started, and this is thanks to Della, by the way, who gave me the confidence to positively and professionally challenge these people, because they are not gathering young people's voices. They're not empowering young people. They're just doing a tick box exercise. And I'll probably get slated for saying that, but that's how it feels for me as a youth worker when I've got professionals coming to me just because someone is LGBT. I've come into an email this morning. We've got a transgender young person. What can you do?
They're not seeing them as people. They're not seeing them as humans.
Seeing them as a label.
They are
a label.
It's like someone on their caseload they're ticking boxes for, and that they want to kind of either get rid or say, this is what I've done for this young person, but they're not seeing that person as a whole rounded person. They're not thinking about what support they actually need and listening to what they actually want. You know what, so before becoming an assessor, I worked in a school. So I worked in a school for, well, a long time, but the last job I did for 2.5 years was a pastoral manager. So I worked a lot with youth workers, a lot with early help, a lot with social workers. And the other people doing the same role as me within the school, the pastoral managers, did not see how important youth workers are to these young people. Because the youth workers, because of the principles, to be fair, and because of the way that we work, we build that trust, we build that relationship. And things that they would never say to a social worker, they'll open up, even though they know it'll go back to the social worker, they'll open up because you build that trust with them. And yeah, it is so frustrating that other professionals don't see that the work we do is kind of important, because for those young people, it could be the most important person in their lives, because they don't have that stability, they don't have that person they trust, they can kind of tell all of their secrets or their worries to. So yeah, it's amazing that you're kind of challenging that person, because I used to, when I used to do the pastoral manager job, because they're not seeing them as young people who have their own thoughts, their own beliefs. They're just seeing them as kind of a person on their caseload, maybe a reference number on their caseload they're trying to get rid of and put strategies in place. So yeah, it's amazing.
But it's about educating yourself, though, isn't it? Like, because I'm LGBT, it doesn't mean I'm the font of all knowledge, because I'm really not. Like, it's a spectrum of stuff. So just because I'm LGBT, it doesn't mean that I'm the expert. And I've never questioned being a woman. I've never questioned, do I want to be trans? Do I want to be the opposite to what I was born? But yet I'm getting these sort of questions of, well, I've got this trans person, so you must know how to fix that. You must know how to deal with that. You must know how to give support, is the feeling that you get on a constant basis when it comes to that. And yes, I can empathise and I can talk about certain things, but I've never gone through that process. So I might not be the right person for a transgender person, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's kind of about them trying to put support in place to begin with, and then deciding without meeting them and actually know what they want and what kind of support they need. This is why just direct them straight to you. It's frustrating. Right.
Can I just, sorry, I'm just going to say there what Sue was saying. I'm finding this all really interesting, and I'm hearing my own voice. This is the kind of stuff I've been saying for 20 years about youth work. And to hear 3 much younger youth workers say my words and come from the same perspective as me is almost bringing tears to my eyes. I'm thinking, God, I'm not singing this song alone anymore. I've got other people singing it. All of what you're saying, if you could hear yourselves, all of you are saying these principles that are in front of us right now in a different way, but they're all coming across really clearly. Voluntary engagement, Sue, going back to the young person that you've just had the referral from, first thing I would be thinking as the youth worker is, do they want to join my service? Is this something, or are we just stereotyping and labelling that young person? Straight away, voluntary engagement. I also want to just come back to code of conduct, because I think it's vital. You're all talking about influencing and changing youth work practice, but if you don't embed the code of conduct into what we do daily, we are never going to be seen as vital and important in young people's lives, depending on the way we conduct ourselves. And for me, code of conduct is about remaining professional in front of other professionals, in front of our young people. And if we don't start hurrying up and portraying that, challenging bad practice, then we're never going to be seen as important. And that's why all other professions don't see us as the third emergency service, in fact, in what we are. So though all these principles are really important, for me, it's code of conduct. We are the face of youth work. You are the face of youth work. Don't ever forget that.
Definitely. Right, we'll move on. We've covered it a little bit in that section. We'll go on to kind of communities. So firstly, Devon, can you just kind of describe your community? So maybe the issues within your community and how your youth work practice supports the young people within your community.
Yeah, so for me personally, I'll be talking about the Youth Justice Court and what the community looks like for them. So in Rotherham, to sort of describe the community, we've got 4 youth clubs in the whole of Rotherham, which has gone down from, dare I say it, 40, I believe. We had one in each area. Now, what we're finding is in the community, and I've challenged a lot of sort of chief executive and chief constable police officers about this, is that what we're finding is young people, they've got nowhere to go because, you know, there's nothing in the community. That much money's been cut, we know that. So because I've been there, I can physically put myself in their shoes. So I kind of challenge this in a way, and what I say is, well, firstly, if I'm out with my mates and there's a group of us, 20 of us, where we're going to go? We can't go to a park, because if we go to a park, coppers are going to move us off. All right, okay. If I'm outside, where do I need to go? I need to go to the shop. All right. So where am I going to stand? Outside the shop. So I don't have to go anywhere. Do you know what I'm saying? So what we're finding is a lot of these young people, yeah, they're getting stopped, searched, stereotyped by a lot of police officers. But then again, on the other hand, we've also got young people who are causing antisocial behaviour stood outside shops. So what I'm trying to say is we've got a lot of marginalised young people with no opportunities, and the only place to go is shops, or literally to be stood on a street corner. So what my work does is gives them an opportunity and gives them somewhere to go. So if they come to our group, not only can they make a difference, not only are they going to be able to go back to the boys and be like, listen, actually, do you know what? I'm telling them coppers about us, and I'm saying, actually, who gives you the right to stop and search us because I'm dressed in JD? Because in reality, companies like JD are making a killing off people like us because of what we're wearing. So yeah, what my work does is gives them young people a voice. And this is the beauty of my work, and this is what I love, and this is what wakes me up in the morning. I do not go to young people with the lived experience, take a glass full of their wisdom and use it as part of some big council work. I get that person in and give them the opportunity, because my big personal belief is that, and this is what I found was happening with me, is that what's the point in taking a glass of somebody's wisdom when you could bring that person in, train the working with people skills, and have an unlimited fountain of wisdom? Like, that is just a no-brainer to me. And that's one thing that really champions what I do. So yeah, I think not only does it give the young people who I'm working with an opportunity to train other professionals who are then going to work with it, maybe their friends or other young people of the future, but it also gives them a role model, really, and gives them an opportunity to look at me and think, actually, do you know what? This guy's got in. This guy's in services, man. He's going to be making changes. Give him a few years. Once he gets to the top, he'll be able to make differences. And the fact that they share very, very, very similar views around statutory services and systematic issues as I do, it's nice to know that, you know, when I do get through the door, I'm not going to be on my own when I get there. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I think that specifically with the Youth Justice Court anyway, I think what it does is it kind of opens their eyes in a way, and it kind of, because very much like me, you know, I felt like I didn't fit the academic mold in school. I didn't really feel like I met this socially aspected academic mold either, to be quite honest, because it were very much, and what I'd like to take into consideration is that when we talk about social marginalisation, you know, a lot of these young people are being told, just go and find new friends and that, by the same professionals who were sat there agreeing with the theory of identity, when in the theory of identity it says, well, we gel to the same sort of people. So right now I've been released 3 years, but my friends are still the same friends. I just make more informed decisions. I don't go and get in cars with thousands of pounds in, but I still speak to the same people because that's my identity. That's who I am. So when I'm talking to these young people and I'm saying, actually, do you know what, lads, I'm being honest with you. If you think that coming out of this sort of subculture and going into another one is easy, it's not, man. It's not. And one problem that I find is that once a young person has been stigmatized and labeled with that offender, which by the way is a man-made term and created by predominantly middle class, what happens is, if they did want to go and find another subculture, find another group of young people to gel with, that becomes very, very hard, because a lot of other subcultures don't accept people who've committed an offence or been an offender. So yeah, for me, it kind of opens their eyes and like kind of tells them that I'm in this service and I'm championing what they're saying, and I genuinely feel that in this service where I am now, I'm representing that cohort of people, really, people like me.
Yeah, gives them kind of, I think what you're saying there, it gives them kind of a sense of perspective of what they can have their own thoughts. They can be within their community, because that's their, I say that the community you come from, I'm sure we all feel the same. The community that we come from is our community, is identity. We can move out of that community, but those people within that community, that's our identity. That's where we come from. That's how we were molded as a person. So you can still be within your community and have the identity, but have your own thoughts and have a think about, yeah, it's about educating them as best as you possibly can, isn't it? It's difficult sometimes because they are still young people and they're kind of trying to develop their thoughts in their own way. But yeah, it sounds like you're making an amazing difference within your community, which is really, really, really impressive, Devon. So, Sue, so kind of the same kind of question to you. So can you describe the community that you work in, maybe some of the issues and how your work supports the young people within your community?
Yeah, so like I say, I work across a number of like communities, but predominantly, obviously, my specialisation is LGBT. One of the issues that we face in that community, lots of issues. As a world, young people see that we're going backwards at the minute as well, with changes that are happening in other countries for LGBT people, for mass murders that are happening to LGBT young people. You know, they come to me and they go, what is going on? Like, why is that happening? And stuff like that. And there is a fear that, you know, things could go backwards here for us. So not only do we have what's going on in the world and social media and the media and stuff like that, you know, we've also got, like Devon's just said there, identity. You know, young people, when I was a young person, which was a long time ago because I've just hit 40, phones weren't a thing. All this designer stuff wasn't a thing. It was literally, you were either dead popular, you were a bit in the middle, or you were like known as the geeks or the like the emo kids. Like, there was just 3 groups when I was in school. But if you don't fit in now, or you don't look a certain way, or you're not wearing a certain brand of clothing, then you're targeted. And as a young person, not only have you got all that going on, and being a teenager, which I wouldn't do for £1 million, like all the tea in China now, like I just wouldn't want to be a young person in today's world. But you've got that identity sort of crisis going on as well. Like, all the hormones are up in the air. They don't know who they want to be, who they are, what they want to do as a job. And for me, I think education's all the wrong way round. I feel like education should be your 3 main ones: your maths, your English, your science. And then I think once you hit like year 9, maybe year 10 more so, you do like life experience. You go and work in industries, you go and get a sense of what it's like to work, you know, what different industries feel like. We're asking young people at the age of 16, 17 to make career choices when they've not had any lived experiences, they've not had any life experience. So for me, I think everything's a bit backwards for young people, and I think the issues we face are, you know, right now we've seen a cost of living crisis, we've seen an increase in crime, we've got identity crises, you know, all them things. Devon, like, I just feel like I should let Devon, because what he says, I'm just thinking in my head, you articulate that so well. And although I'm not working in the criminal justice side or youth justice side of things, they're all similar things of what we're experiencing here. You know, we have our youth bus that goes out 4 nights a week. We go into hotspot areas to try and curb some of the antisocial behaviour, some of the gang culture, some of the drug dealing. We're not the police. We over the summer period last summer, we were out in a park, and you know, synonymous for drug dealing and stuff like that. I had to make the decision to move us out because of the fear factor from them young people in that area, you know, making, you know, not to target them, but making it known that we weren't wanted, we needed to be, you know, moved on, sort of thing. How do we get into them young people when they're already so ingrained in that sort of culture? I think sometimes these people who make these decisions, the people who tell us where we need to be, they're not living it. They don't know what it's like. They think we just got a magic wand and we can fix everything, but we can't. Like you said, Dev, sometimes it's having somebody who's had that lived experience, who's done it, and then come out the other side and gone, well, I'm not changing my identity or my friends, but I've learned from the consequences that I've faced. And now I'm going to make more informed choices to not land myself back where it was. But not all young people want that, because they have we give them no aspirations. We give them nothing really to sort of aim for, you know, job wise and stuff like that. And sometimes I sit here and really frustrated going, how can we change this? How can we move some of these young people out of that culture and into, like you said, Dev, taking what they've learned and their lived experiences, bringing them into to get the next lot of young people who are getting into them behaviours. Because it's all well and good us as professionals going, right, don't do that, don't do this, don't do the other. What do you know? You've not lived it. A bit like for LGBT people, you know, I've got colleagues who I can do what you do. Whenever they come and work alongside me, who do the young people go to when they've got an issue? It's not them. I've usually got a queue. Can I have a one-to-one? Can I have 5 minutes? Can we have a chat? Because they know I've lived it and I've been it. And you know, there's that thing, isn't there, for the female footballers at the minute? If you see it, you can be it. If you see it, you can do it. And that's what we need to be doing, I think. And that's the importance of all the stuff we do, of all the stuff we learn, is we're putting it out there. Like, you know, Della said about the code of conduct. If we're living and breathing that and putting it out there and being dead professional, people will start going, yeah, I can do that. I can make a change. I can make a difference. And I just think, like, I could sit here all day, like talking about it, and I just feel like single-handedly we're not going to change it. I don't know what we do to do it, but you know, without us, who are some of those young people got?
Yeah, I think it is. I do agree with that. Like, individually, we're not going to change it, but if we can make the industry as professional as we possibly can, have people like yourselves who want to make a change, step by step, hopefully there'll be changes within the community that you're working in. There will be change, but within wider society there needs to be change. So hopefully people like Dev, people like yourselves, hopefully will go into management roles and maybe change that community, and hopefully the community that you change will change other communities. And that's,
but then, like Dev said before, I don't feel like I fit that mold. No. I'm not academic in the slightest. I just want to do. You know, I'm all well and good sitting with somebody and saying, "Can we do this? How do we do it? Let's come up with a strategy." Don't ask me to write it. I'll input into it, but just let me do my job and let me try and give the best for the young people that we serve. Because at the end of the day, although we get paid to do a job, we work for the young people. Somebody said that to me a few weeks ago. You know, although I get paid by the council and the council pay me to deliver a job, sometimes what they ask to deliver isn't what the young people want. So it's basically I'm working for the young people. They tell me what they want, or we see what the need is, and then I work for them. I want to give them what they need.
I'm struggling to comment because this is where I struggle to articulate what I'm going to say. I don't want it to become negative.
I'll beef out swear words if needed.
No, it's not for swear. It's just, I think firstly we need to be totally honest and say that actually what we're doing is hard. We're asking young people who have been maybe failed by multiple different systems, and if we are giving them an opportunity to come and work in the system, then what we're essentially saying is, will you come and help the system that's failed you? Now that's his first barrier. That's inevitably going to be hard, and that's why I genuinely believe that there's not people out there who specifically hate social care or hate the police. I believe that a lot of these deprived and marginalised people understand that these systems aren't set up for them, and as much as it depresses me to say that, it can't be. So that's why people like us are going to try and change this culture from within. And that's why I think the next step forward would be getting the people who we're working for. So like me and Sue have just said, we work for young people. We seek our recognition off young people. Whereas when you're in a service manager's position, you don't get recognition off young people. You get recognition from Ofsted and CQC. Do you think Ofsted and CQC employ the working class and deprived? Nah, man, they don't. That's where there's a shift, and that's where there's this differential between people really at the top who are that far away from this frontline work, who are working to these expectations of like risk, Ofsted, CQC, and they've got all these pressures. And generally speaking, them pressures are not to get a young person to a participation group. It's, have you got your asset plus done? Have you got your risk assessment done? Are you going to that panel meeting next week? Now I've got a visit with a young man. You'll have to change it. That's where we're at. That's where we're at. But without it becoming very negative, this is why I feel that it's the perfect time, because there's so many of us who are championing this. There's a few in Rotherham, and I know for a fact through networking, there's a lot of people in Bradford, Liverpool, Cheshire, Telford. There's loads of people in Leeds who are all championing this same thing. And I do believe it's just a matter of time before we get a couple of people in influential positions and this sort of movement really, really kicks off. I just wanted to kind of wrap that up because I didn't want it to get negative, that's all.
No. I know, I do agree totally with what you're saying. I feel like as well on this qualification, we've had a lot of people that have been doing other careers for a long time, but then just maybe volunteered working in a youth club or volunteered working with young people within a certain sector and seen the kind of influence and impact they can have on those young people's lives. So I think that's happening more and more now, and they've got that baseline passion, and then you want to learn about the code of conduct, about the principles of youth work, about professional boundaries, about equality, about diversity. They want to learn all that and put all those skills in place, and hopefully those type of people and people like yourselves can kind of make the industry as professional as it can be, and we'll get the recognitions hopefully from other services that we long deserve, fingers crossed. But it's people making a difference on a day-to-day basis, the most important thing, isn't it? And I think it will come. But yeah, thanks
I think as well, Deb, like I feel like I didn't answer the importance of youth work practice on your community, but I think for a lot of these young people, if we weren't here, they'd have nothing.
Yeah.
So I know for a fact, I've got one young person who literally gets up Monday to Friday, goes to school. As soon as they finish school, they come to UC. Every day it's open, they're in that UC. And sometimes we have to actually say, you need to go home, because we've got homes to go to as well. Like, you need to go home. And so, you know, these places, when they get taken away because youth work isn't statutory, because youth work is just youth work, it's just having a game of pool and having a bit of a laugh with the young people. It's not. It's vital for some of these young people because they've got nothing else.
And
that's what the government don't see.
Yeah, it's not just impact; it's impact on society as well, isn't it? If they don't have that youth club to go to after school, what will they be like in school the next day? Not even the next day, in the next 4 or 5 weeks, because they haven't got that safe place that they go to after school. So that's a generation of young people that we're kind of not supporting like we should do. Yeah, it's frustrating. Right, we'll move on to the next bit. So I think we've actually covered this pretty well in the last 2 sections. So we'll go on to kind of the skills. Sorry, I can't talk. Skills, knowledge, and behaviour of an effective youth worker. So you have kind of discussed this a little bit already, but in terms of your key strengths as a youth worker, Devon, what would you say they were? I know it's hard to kind of. I know you seem very modest about your skills, but what do you think you champion, and what skills do you have in particular within your practice?
I'd like to say We aren't blowing smoke up my own backside. I'd like to think that I'm quite good at connecting with young people. I don't like the word engagement. I think it offers a level of expectation from the people that we work with. That's why I changed that to connection. So I'd like to think that I'm quite good at attuning myself with young people too, because I think that a lot of the young people I work with have shared many experiences similar to theirs. So inevitably there's going to be a subconscious attunement. And I'm gutted you've kind of skipped past that model of practice, because I were going to mention a model that I've adopted. Am I all right to quickly mention?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Oh, man, thank you. So there's a model of practice by a guy called Andy Briley, and it's called the PACT model. Now, it's actually by a guy called Dan Siegel, but Andy's adapted this, and it stands for presence, attunement, connection, and that's how we establish trust with young people. He mentions it in his book, Connecting with Young People, and it's amazing. Every talk that I do when I go to other services with Andy, we promote this practice, because what it basically lays out is the power of being present, ringing your young people when you don't need to, seeing them when they're not expecting you, because then they know, because they are fully aware that you're only coming out to see them on a statutory appointment because you've got to be there. The times when you don't need to is the times when you get the most stuff. Attunement, to be able to attune yourself to a young person, that basically means, in a nutshell, I had a young man come to our group, right, who was developing a youth justice website, and he says, Dev, man, I'm not going to lie, I'm not feeling this. I want to stick some tunes on, I want to skank. So I stuck some grime on. I don't listen to grime, and I definitely don't listen to drill anymore, but I was skanking and I was giving it gun fingers, do you know what I mean? Because that's what I did. I attuned myself with that young man. Now, there was another professional in the room. He opted out of doing that. I'm not saying that he's a bad professional. I'm not saying that that were bad practice. But what I am saying is, for him to build a relationship with that young man, it's going to be a lot harder. And like I said, we mentioned the theory of identity. And if I naturally gel with people who have shared the same experiences, well, inevitably, there's going to be a subconscious attunement. That's a tool. My experience is therefore being used as a tool now. And once you're attuned, that's where you can connect with people. So, for example, when I think back to my education past, I can remember 2 teachers, and that's because they did certain things that were connected. All the social workers I had tens of social workers, but I can only remember 2 because we're connected, because of the work that we did. And that's why they're the people who have my trust. So yeah, that's sort of the model that I take. So my key strengths, I would probably say, is trying to connect with young people. I like to think that in a lot of my sessions, I develop a connection within an hour of being with them. I think I'd like to say that I'm quite good when it comes to opportunities and networking and signposting. So, for example, I keep every contact I ever come into, whoever's got a passion for working with young people or a passion for anything to do with young people, I keep as a contact. Like I said, I network with people from all over the country. I've got a lovely lady, you probably heard her, Alison Cope, son called Depsman. She does an amazing curriculum. She goes in and out of prisons talking about knife crime from Birmingham. I'm networking with her, trying to get her up into Rotherham. Red Tangent Records, Cam Harper down in Bristol. Like I said, I'd like to say that I'm quite good at trying to pull these opportunities from lots and lots of different areas. Like I'm taking a group of young people down to a youth club in Scunthorpe. They've just set it up called the Indie Cafe. Big 4-floor thing. They've got a stage, PA system. They can gig, they can record. They've got music studios, recording booths. So yeah, we're sorting them out. We're taking them there next Sunday.
Sounds amazing. The model you discussed, what was it called again? What was it called?
It's called the PACT model, PACT, and it's by a guy called Andy Briley. He wrote a book called Your Honour, Can I Tell You My Story, which is absolutely impeccable. He basically breaks down his experience and talks about when and where social care and certain statutory services should have got involved. And then he wrote a second book called Connecting with Young People, which is all about basically what we're talking about, what he's took from his lived experience and what he uses now to work with young people. And he's created that model, and honestly, I love it. I really, really do love it.
Perfect. It'd be a really good one for the apprentice kind of research that would and looking at models. So I'll share a link on the podcast description of that model, maybe some of his books that the learners can have a look at, and they can actually relate it back to their work when they're looking at models of youth work. Stu, so we'll go on to kind of your knowledge, skills and behaviours. What would you say your key kind of strengths are as a youth worker?
I think a bit like Dev. I feel like I can connect with young people. I had to have a professional discussion about this with Della, and she was like, but what is it? And I was like, I don't know, but if I could bottle it, I would, because I feel like I need to give it to some of my team. And the only way I can describe it is like being down on their level, not talking down to them, and just being on their level and treating them with the same respect that I would expect from them as well. And the easiest way to describe it, but being professional for me, is just trying to be their friend, just trying to be that person who they can talk to, they can be open with. And I think some of the skills and the knowledge and behaviours that I think I bring as a youth worker is like my awareness around young people, being aware of, like, you know, if someone's a little bit quiet, you know, who normally isn't, what's going on there, why are they not their normal selves, or someone's being a bit loud that isn't normally, is something going on for them. So being aware. Obviously, you know, something that I hope I've given across is passion for giving for young people, passion to try and give them everything that I can to make their lives better, to you know, to help them make informed choices, to make them, you know, give them a road into doing this job, to giving what they've had to give to the next generation. Being resilient. This is a hard job. Sometimes it can really take its toll, but it's about taking it, owning it, moving on, and keeping going. Adaptability. You can write all the session plans in the world for your session. Doesn't mean that they're going to work. It's not, you know, you don't know what young person's going to come in and have had something go on that day. So it's about being able to adapt and think on your feet, on the go all the time, like being ready to just change it up. Being non-judgmental, you know, treating every young person the same, being empathetic, creating safe spaces, being inclusive. I hate saying this, but I try and be a positive role model or a positive influence on young people. I have got some case studies where, you know, young people have left the service, moved on. You know, I've got one who's living down in London now, has just graduated from university, and he contacted me during COVID, asked me could I do a podcast with him, because some of the stuff that I instilled with him when he was a young person with me, he still uses now today. And to hear that, I was in bits. Like, to think that I'm still having an influence 3, 4, 5 years down the line. That's why I do this job for. If I can make one small change for one young person, job done. Relatability, a bit like Dev said there, being able to be relatable to the young people. If you can't make a relationship with them, if you can't be on their level, you're not gonna be able to help them. You're not gonna be able to support them realistically, because they'll just see this sort of barrier. So yeah, I'm being a bit fun, having a bit of a laugh and a joke. You know, life's hard for us as adults. I feel like it's 10 times harder as a young person with everything else they've got going on. So being able to have a bit of banter, a bit like Dev said, you know, I don't know what word you used for your music side, but, you know, getting down with the young person, mirroring that behaviour, but staying professional and within our boundaries at the same time. You know, that's the key thing. It's all good having a laugh and a joke, but it's keeping it professional and you know, not stepping over that line, but so much so that you're still being able to make that relationship with young people. I think there's lots of skills. I remember doing, you know, what skills does someone need to be an effective youth worker? And the list was long. And I think you just got to get the job. You just got to, it's a vocation. It's, for some people it's a job, but for those that want to make a difference, it's a vocation. It's not an easy job. It's not a well-paid job. It's a vocation. You've got to want to make a difference.
Yeah, I think you've got to, you can obviously develop those skills, knowledge and behaviour, but I think you've got to have a baseline of that going into the job anyway. You've got to have that kind of emotional intelligence as well, working with those young people, and you've got to have those skills to begin with. And then whilst you're doing it, you learn things, don't you? And that's how you develop your skills, knowledge and behaviour. But I think everyone that goes into youth work hopefully has got a baseline of every one of those things that you've just talked about. Fingers crossed. Hopefully, you think so anyway. some practice, maybe not, but yeah. Right, this one we kind of discussed it as well. in the principle. So professional boundaries. So within youth work, why are professional boundaries so important? That would.
Well, it protects both the young people and me.
Mm.
If I don't get good professional boundaries, wow. Yeah, so for me, this is a massive one. And I'll be honest, when I first started the apprenticeship, this is what I was most worried about, because with me being young and with me working in Rotherham, which, bear in mind, there's only like 116,000 people living here. It's not a big town. I knew that I was going to bump into people who I knew, or like my friends' little brothers, or, you know, that sort of thing. And it happened. So for me, the importance of it is inevitable. It's one of the most important things of my role. If I don't get these boundaries right, it could quite easily turn a full group upside down. So by that, I mean, I was working with a young man who knew my family, actually. He lived 2 streets down from where I grew up. He knew everything about me, knew what I'd been sent down for, absolutely everything. So when we first started working with each other, we kind of spoke about the difference between me going around to his house when I was younger on a weekend to me working with him now, and the fact that I've got a job to do. I'm here to get certain things done, but inevitably I'm here for him. So I kind of used it in a way that's actually, yeah, you can still see me as Dev, and you can still see me as, yeah, man, he's a geezer back in there. Yeah, we used to chill and that. But actually now he's in a position of got a little bit of power. So when I'm telling him stuff, he can go back and relay that to the right people. Not only that, I know Dev's a geezer. Dev knows I'm a geezer, which means he's going to bring me with him, and he's going to try and take me as far as he's going to go. I think consequences of not establishing right boundaries is just disastrous. So, for example, if that young man was to tell everybody in the group what I got sent down for, that would not have gone down well. They would have looked at me and gone, "What? You got sent down for that? But now you're here." And that's why I don't tell people what I got sent down for, because it's the struggles in between that often get missed, and the years of pain and all that jazz and all the challenges that I had to overcome. Safeguarding boundaries, another massive one. If I don't make the young people aware that if they tell me something that's going to harm them or harm somebody else or harm me, that I've got to relay that back, that's going to set me up to fail. Because then as soon as they come out with, "Yo, Dev, I've got an 8 in my back pocket," and I'm like, "Oh, mate, I've got to say something about that. Like, I've got to do something about that." "What do you mean, man? You didn't tell me that?" If I don't go over that at the beginning of a relationship, I'm pretty set up to fail, really, because then they've always got dirt on me in a way. Not to make it sound slang, but it's right. And to some young people, that's what it'll look like. It'll be like, "Actually, I've got a bit of dirt on him. So yeah, you can buy me a Mackey's today, Devin. You're paying, bro." Do you know what I mean? So it'd be quite easily done like that. And how they guide my practice, I'd say, well, it's the first thing that I do. So when I meet young people, I go over sort of, first of all, why I got into the role. Because I think that that's a massively important thing. A lot of the time when I meet a young person, they're quite open and honest in telling me where they're at. So if I meet somebody who's in care, they'll be like, "Yeah, I got into care because of this." And personally, I think, well, you've just shared something about your life. I kind of want to do the same before I start telling you where his boundaries are at. You know what I mean? I think that's one of the most important things. So I share a little bit about me, a little bit about my experiences, and then we talk about what moving forward. And then we talk about boundaries, not only from my point of view, but from their point of view as well, because there's going to be certain things that they're like, "Dev, don't ask me about that, bro. I'll talk to you when I'm ready." So yeah, I think it's at both sides, really. I've got my own boundaries in the sense that I've got my safeguarding concerns, and I need to know that we both get where this relationship's at. It's a professional working relationship. We're not mates. We're not going to be meeting up and going for a bevy at weekend. I mean, I don't drink anyway, but you know, I wouldn't do that. So yeah, for me, I'd say that that's one of the most important things, and I get it out of the way right at the beginning, because then, well, that's what the relationship's built on, trust, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think we discussed it obviously a little bit. The other things that we discussed. So it's about a lot of youth workers maybe don't set those boundaries out at the beginning of their practice with that young person, and as you say, it becomes it can become an absolute disaster within their practice and for those young people as well that maybe aren't safeguarding, as you say, as you should do. So yeah, I think setting those boundaries in the first place is so important. Still being human with them, obviously being professional as much as possible, but them seeing that you're still a person that cares and has a personality, you can have a laugh with them. But at the end of the day, we are professionals with a lot of the time maybe very vulnerable young people, so that's got to be taken into consideration as well, isn't it? Stu, just for yourself, so the importance of professional boundaries within your practice and kind of how they guide your practice.
Yeah. Again, I think Dev's covers a lot of it there, really. But I think, the difference a little bit is I don't do too much one-to-one work. So whenever we start a new group, that's the first thing we do, and it's young person led at first. So I like to see what they want to put out there. That should be boundaries and like ground rules and stuff. And then what I do is when they've give me theirs, I then put my little ones in and the ones that I think need to be in there as a professional as well. Safeguarding, first thing, every conversation I sort of have with a young person, that before they even go anywhere, is whatever you're about to say to me, I just need to make you aware of confidentiality and safeguarding. If you're putting yourself at risk or anybody else, then I can't keep that a secret. So that's out there. And I think what we do is in the groups, we write them out. So the young people will tell me, I write them all down. I'll add in mine and the reasons why they're there. And then, if they start to break them, they come back out again and we reevaluate them and we go, why did we put these in place? You put them, these were your rules as well as mine. Like, these are your boundaries and my boundaries. So why are we breaking them? Why are we not adhering to them? And I think professional boundaries are not just for between young people, they're between us and professionals as well. So, our colleagues, it's about sometimes, you might be having a cup of tea with a couple while you're waiting for your young people to come in, and you could be talking about what you've been doing at the weekend. It's about keeping it, professional. That isn't the place to be having your conversation about what you've done at the weekend, when you've got young people walking in the centre getting ready to come into session. So it's just, again, it's trying to change the culture, being more self-aware of when we're having them conversations, where we're having them conversations, because the young people don't need to be aware of what we're doing in and out of work, really. So yeah, and the dead important, aren't they? They keep us safe, they keep the young people safe, they keep our colleagues safe. Yeah,
definitely. Right, we'll move on to values and prejudice. So does your own prejudice and values impact your youth work practice? Sue, we'll start with you, Stan, because I know we always start with Devon. So we'll start with Sue this time, see if you can.
Pressure's on.
Yeah. So, yeah, does your own prejudice and values impact youth work practice? So it's quite a broad question, but
it is. And I'm not going to sit here and lie and say, no, it doesn't, because it does. We're human at the end of the day, and the way we've been brought up, the people we've been around, life experience, all that, we've all got prejudice and values. This was quite an interesting one as a workshop, actually, and to be able to actually say the things that annoy you, and they do sometimes bring a prejudice to the work you're doing. It felt like a bit of a relief. So, like, one of my biggest things is when you're in a group with young people and they just overtalk all the time. Like, it doesn't matter how many times you tell them, just constantly. Like, it's one of them things that really, because I've only got one pair of ears and I can only listen to one pair at a time. So yeah, sometimes if I've got that one young person that just literally is doing it all the time, sometimes, like, I'll sit there and I'll be like, oh, please just stop it, like, and then I have to just take myself away for a few minutes, go and give my head a bit of a wobble, and then go back in and reassess the situation and kind of go, pull them. I would never do it in front of all the other young people, because I think that's a horrendous experience, and I think they probably get that too much in school. So if it's becoming too much, I'll take them to one side and just say, listen, these are set out in our boundaries and our rule. Why what's going on? Is there something bothering you? Do you need some time? Do we need to have a chat? Like, what's going on? So yeah, I think as much as we try and be, hold our prejudices and value like away, then sometimes they do come into play, and we just have to own it and take ourselves away and talk to another professional about it. Just get it out there, because it's not fair on the young people if we don't sort of like put it to bed straight away. We're giving them a disservice. So yeah, it's a difficult one, and as much as we do all the training, non-biased training, all that kind of stuff, you just got to be aware of them. I think that's the key thing, being aware of your own prejudices and values, and knowing that they're there really, and trying not to put them out there.
Yeah, it's kind of linking them back to your professional boundaries. You might have those values and prejudice, but think, right, within my professional boundaries, I can't kind of let young people know my prejudice and my values. So yeah, sometimes if we're having a bad day, they might come out a little bit more, but it's kind of, you learn, don't you? You learn exactly what to say and when to say to the young people that you're working with, because you know them better than anyone. So yeah.
And it's being self-aware, isn't it? It's that key thing. It's being self-aware, and like I said earlier on, sometimes you walk into your session and all hell breaks loose, and you could be having the worst day in the world, and you just think, I need to just take myself away for 2 minutes, give me head a wobble, fresh face, here we go, let's go, put them all to bed and put them to one side. And then having that time after session to debrief, I think that's super important, just to get it all out there.
Yeah, it's like one of the skills is being reflective, isn't it? And that's kind of linking to that. So Devon, on this one, so does your own prejudice and values impact your own youth work practice at all?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. It does. For me, this is one thing that I've not struggled with so much when it comes to working with young people.
Professionals.
Man, like that's one thing that I'll be honest, I'm still working on, because I have to bite my tongue a lot. And sometimes I need to remember that it's a perspective thing. People see the world differently to me, and that's all right. That's okay. Not everybody has to see it like Dev does. One big thing for me is lived experience, and I value that. Now, when I have to laugh or cry when I get asked to work with a group of young people to contribute to a strategic plan, and then when I get this strategic plan back, I can't hand it to the same young people who've contributed to it, because they wouldn't understand a word of it, because it's all jargon. I struggle to see how that's co-producing and co-production, because how can you be participating in something that you don't understand the final product of? So that kind of annoys me, and I have to really I have to prepare myself beforehand, because I need to think, right, when I walk into this session, I need the young people to view me as, he's seeing the same concerns, but we're going to challenge it, rather than he's seeing the same concerns and he's getting fed up of singing the same song. That's one thing that I am personally working on, because I do find it frustrating. And like I said, I'm the only person who's been in the justice system and now works for the service in Rotherham. So that's hard, because obviously inevitably I'm only seeing it from my perspective, really. So I think sometimes having the lived experience is a great thing. It's a great tool, but I also think sometimes it hurts a little bit, because I know and I can feel it. That's probably one of my values that gets in the way a little bit sometimes. Sometimes I have a service manager sit me down and say, Dev, you need to remember, man, you don't kick back at the system, you change it from within. But we live and learn. That'd probably be my example. I think that's the biggest value and prejudice that probably impacts my work.
I hope you enjoyed this episode and the discussion, especially with the apprentices. In the episode description, I'll add some links to some research that Devon in particular discussed, and some of the books that he also discussed. I'll also put some other research that could be useful in your study in this module. But yeah, hopefully we'll have another one of these episodes in a different module up soon. And I hope you enjoyed, and let us know if you found it useful. Thank you. Bye now.